All right, everybody, before we get started, I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen. If you enjoy what's going on here, I would love it and really appreciate it if you could subscribe and like and comment if you're on YouTube, and if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever it happens to be, if you can give us a follow there as well. We're trying to grow this as much as possible, so the help that you can give will be truly, truly appreciated. Let's get into the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Health Movement Podcast. We are on episode number 32 right now. I'm Derek. I'm your host. I am a certified personal trainer and a teacher of over 20 years. Tim, as I mentioned in the last one, in case you did not hear it, got a new job as a firefighter EMT, and because of the responsibilities that come along with that, he is not able to join us for the foreseeable future. Hopefully he can find time to get back into it, but we wish him the best. It's something he worked really hard for, so super excited for him in that endeavor. You can find us on YouTube if you're listening to this, on Spotify or Apple Podcast. We're at the Health Movement Podcast. You can jump over there. We would really, really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you're listening to it on YouTube. That definitely helps with the engagement, and I'd love to hear what people are thinking about what's going on in the show. And as I always start off with, we are not doctors, so before you begin any new fitness programs, change in nutrition, anything like that, please consult with your physician. Now, I have an awesome guest with us tonight. I'm super excited to talk to him. Mike Schultz is a master trainer of over 25 years. He's a personal trainer, mentor, and sales mentor. He's an author. He's a fitness regional trainer. And he had a stint as a local access TV superstar as well. So, Mike, thank you for joining us. Hopefully, I didn't butcher any of that too badly.
No, pretty good.
All right. I'll take pretty good. That's like a B. So we're happy with that. All right. So jumping into this, there was a lot we kind of talked about beforehand that you are passionate about. You have a lot of experience here. 25 years in the industry is definitely a long time. And it sounds like you have covered most, if not all, aspects of fitness in some regard. So do you want to give us a little bit of a background, how you got into this, what led you to where you are now?
So basically, growing up, I played a lot of sports. But then I kind of, as I got a little older, I narrowed it down to baseball, and I was a
Okay.
pitcher. And so that got me interested in throwing mechanics, the kind of fitness part of how can the fitness augment throwing and the mechanics of baseball. And so that led into eventually I got a shoulder injury. I was starting to get shoulder problems my junior year. Then I got into martial arts. I did Parker Kempo for about 3 years,
Wow.
which again, body mechanics and learning how to move, real fascinating, and the kind of philosophy connected to that. I went to Penn State University for college, was undecided on a major for a while. Then I got into I was a philosophy major, psych major, all these kind of things. I eventually got out of those, but they made me kind of well-rounded because it all connects back to training and the mind-body connection, that kind of thing.
Yes.
So even in college, that's when I got into working out for myself, working out for the sake of working out, not just to augment a sport. And in college, when I was getting into philosophy, I was really fascinated by Bruce Lee. That's why I'm wearing the shirt. That's his symbol, the Jeet Kune Do, which translates to Way of the Intercepting Fist, which is a name. He said, you got to name it something, so I'm just going to call it that. But his basic tenet of his philosophy was use whatever works, and whatever works best, that's what we're going to focus on. So in my training, I do that where I try to go, okay, here's an individual. This is what they need, and this is what they want. And so I'm going to adapt my training to the individual. So I'm going to take something from bodybuilding, I'm going to take something from yoga, and take something from Pilates when it makes sense to do that. I'm going to take something from, CrossFit or whatever. So I'm going to take all these tools, a large toolbox, and adapt it to my client. And in response, my client will adapt to the training in a positive way. I also have a background in physical therapy. I had done a couple
Oh,
internships with that. And so from the ground up, from a low functioning client to a high functioning client, I can figure out where they are in relation to that, and then again adapt the training to where they are. So that's a big tenet with that. And then basically I got in the industry, and what I found was you can have a great science background, but everyone is a unique individual. And
that's
so what
so
happens
true.
is you go to school and you learn this stuff, but then here's an 80-year-old woman with knee replacements. Here's an 18-year-old kid that plays football. They're very what works for one doesn't work for the other. They're on a different level of function and dysfunction. Um, so basically, from there, I started out as a trainer, and then I got into the business part of it, and then you learn, hey, I know all this science, but I don't know how to make money. I don't know how to sell,
That's the
right?
important part. Yep.
I don't want to be a broke exercise scientist. So that's where I got into the sales part and learning that and teaching that and that kind of thing. So I've worked for 4 different gyms over the years to different capacities, and I've now I'm independent. So I've had my own business since COVID hit, and doing really well with that with clients, and just having
Are
fun with it.
your are your clients in person or are you online or both?
So a little bit of both. I'd say right now it's 95% in person. I've had a couple people, oh, hey, I'm going to Kansas for 2 weeks. Can we train through Zoom? Okay, great. I can do that.
Yep.
Um, Most people, once they train with me one on one, they're like, I don't want to train through Zoom. I'm
Yeah.
spoiled training with you one on one. I want that personal interaction and touch and cue and how you explain things and so and for me, new clients are a little tough to train through Zoom. If I've been training them for a while, then it's like easy. I can tweak them a little bit because we've already trained, interacted one on one
Yeah.
a lot.
That's good. So you have, it sounds like you've hit all aspects of fitness from the like just the structural aspect and how to build certain muscles to the philosophy behind it to, how to focus on certain aspects of what you're doing to the mind body connection. It sounds like, and you even had you know, not the psychology background
Yep,
or
I took psych a little bit,
yeah, like it
and
seems like you're getting every aspect of what makes somebody well-rounded and a healthy individual, which I
right,
think is overlooked. I forget if this was when we were talking beforehand or during the show, but there's so much more that goes into training than simply like the aesthetics or
right,
I want to work out to look a certain way. Um,
right,
if you work out for the right reasons to be healthier and all that stuff, you look a certain way. Like that's just a byproduct of doing everything the proper way.
right,
Um, but now that you mentioned the 80-year-old woman with a knee replacement and the 18-year-old football player,
right.
when you do the initial assessments with people, how does that generally go for you? What are some questions? Because I know we have some listeners that are nervous to get into this or go to the gym
Right,
or to
right,
hire a trainer. Like, what are some initial questions that they should be asking or looking to have asked of them?
right. So for a long time, how I was trained to do that, it's like, okay, we're going to ask questions about their medical background. We're going to do tests like their blood pressure, heart rate, but they're at rest. We're going to, do their body fat. Like I've worked a couple gyms that had the bioimpedance where they hold on to it or do the
Yeah.
calipers, that kind of thing. Maybe do some measurements. But the problem with all those things, and they're important, and I say still do them depending on the client's comfort level. But
Yeah.
the other thing is, and this is something that really improved my training from the ground up. I went to a personal training seminar years ago, and they had 4 different speakers, and all of them were awesome. And these are high end guys. So the main guy that really stuck with me was Gray Cook, if you know him. He's the
No.
creator of the FMS or functional movement screen.
Gray,
So,
Gray,
uh, yeah,
or
G
EY,
R E
but
Y.
Gray. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Gray Cook. All right.
yeah, yeah. So he's a great guy to find on YouTube. So the main thing is he asked this question. Okay, um, it's really difficult to discuss when we say functional training. A guy who can bench press 300 pounds, that's functional. A woman who can bend down, she's 90 and she can tie her shoe and stand up, that's functional. So it's really hard to describe what's functional.
Yeah.
They're both functional. It's just a different level. It's easier to define what's dysfunctional, right? So he had the
Oh,
functional
yeah.
movement screen, and what the screen is it's 7 different exercises that analyze human movement. And there's 3 clearance tests, like, oh, if you do this position and your back hurts, we're not going to do this other test. So what it is, it's kind of like if someone said to me, hey, I'm a writer. I said, okay, well, let me see how well you know spelling or the alphabet. And they can't do that. How are you a writer? Right? So
Exactly.
you look
Yeah.
at somebody and you go, well, they're lean and they have muscle. Then you say, now move. And the way they move is so uncoordinated. That means that they don't have good movement competency, right?
Yeah.
So their muscles look good. It's kind of like, here's an analogy. It's like if you have a football team and you have all stars in every position, but they all speak a different language and they're all doing different plays. So individually they're good, but they're not. It's not a coordinated effort, right? So things
Coordinated.
like
That's the right word there. Yeah.
right. So things like a squat. Okay, well, show me your overhead squat. No weight, just like a stick over your head, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to look at how your feet turn in or out or go forward or back. Your knees go in and out. Your hips, they're too far forward, like anterior or posterior pelvic tilt. Is one leg higher than the other? When you do the squat, do you shift? Is your upper posture too far forward, too far back? Can you get your arms back into a position so you're at 90-degree angle with gravity? So if they have an inability to do those things, I'm like, oh, so your body's telling me you have a problem with these muscles being weak or underactivated and these other ones being overactivated. So if I'm going to design a program for somebody and I don't know these things about them, I'm guessing or I'm
Yeah.
doing things that don't make any like we're going to pull or push for the sake of pulling and pushing, but based on the empirical evidence about how they move, uh, does that make sense for that specific person? So when someone comes to me and we do an evaluation, even if they don't buy training from me, they're at least learning about their body. You have a problem with this, and you need
Yeah.
to fix this either by yourself or with me, right? You have a problem with the way your spine moves or doesn't move or stabilize or. So what's great about the functional movement screen is when you take someone through that, you're learning about them. They're learning about what you know, and they're always impressed with, boy, you know more about my body than I do. I'm like, well, your body's telling me through movement, not in static. It's same thing like if we did the blood pressure. When
Yeah.
they're at rest, let's say they're 120/80, and their resting heart rate is 70. Oh, that's good. Then you put them in a treadmill at 3 miles an hour, and their heart rate jumps up to 190. That's a problem,
That is
right?
definitely a problem. Yeah.
So now they're under stress. Now they're moving, right? So it's the same thing with a functional movement screen. I'm looking at someone going, he's lean and he's muscular. Okay. That's static. But when he moves, that tells me what's a problem or what's a potential problem. Is this person high risk or low risk and why? Right. So the functional movement screen is a very important tool for someone coming to me as a client. They learn about themselves and what they need to work on. It's also a great sales tool for trainers because it shows that you're an expert. You know what you're talking about. You're not just some
Yeah.
musclehead. You know, that was one thing when I first got into the industry, especially working with older adults. When I lived in Pennsylvania, a lot of these people, when they go to talk to me, they're like, "I don't need you. I don't want to do bodybuilding." That was their perception of what personal training was.
Oh, yeah.
Right. What do you bench? What do you squat?
Yeah.
Right. Like that's all they
I don't
knew.
care.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else is physical therapy. It's like, no, no, no. Let me. What are your goals? Let me show you what to do and what not to do and why. And then I'm going to educate you on proper technique and how to adjust the machine for you, or do we need to do machines and things like that. So then they go, oh, okay. So they're at a level. They're not at a level where they need physical therapy. They're not that dysfunctional, but they're like a level or two above that, where they still need someone to look at how they move and tell them, okay, like I remember years ago, I was a fitness manager and I had a trainer shadowing me,
Yep.
and we're just walking through the weight room, and I was like, okay, so at 8 o'clock we put the weights away, and then here's how you adjust this, and we clean this. And this guy asked me how to use the back extension machine, and I showed him, and I said, looking at like this guy had extreme anterior pelvic tilt or like sway back,
Yeah.
like really tight lower back. I said, based on what I'm seeing with your posture, this isn't what you need to do. And he says, well, what do I need to do? And I said, you need to work the opposite, which is, the muscles in the front. And that puts your spine in a more natural alignment, or, forced posture alignment.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I have a bad lower back, and that's why I'm doing it. I said, right, but it's not that your lower back is weak, it's tight. You
Yeah.
need the opposite of that. You need to loosen that up. The way he walked, he was very like the Tin Man on the Wizard of Oz, very tight, right? So we did a lot of core training and mobility and things like that. And anyways, he ended up buying a large training package just from that conversation. And the trainer was like, wow, how did you do that? I said, well, I wasn't trying to sell him. I'm just educating him. But he saw enough value in that he says, I want to buy training from that guy, right?
Yeah.
Not that thin air. I'm just walking through the weight room.
If you give away that information for free and they see the value in what you can provide,
Right.
I mean, that's the best sales approach I would imagine that you have is, all right, here's some value. Imagine what I can do if we work together for longer.
Right.
Like,
One-on-one, right?
yeah.
And
Did
a
you,
concentrated effort. Yeah.
while you were talking about like doing the assessment and seeing the feet rolling and all that, as a teacher there during the summer, I paint houses. So
Oh, okay.
I'll do a couple of houses here and there. And whenever I drive by a house now, I'm like, oh, we got that trim work that needs to be done. And like, I can't not see it. So when
You
you're
start
walking
sensing
down the
movement
street,
or technique. Yeah.
yeah, when you're walking down the street and you see somebody walking and their posture in your head, or you're
Oh,
like, oh, you should be doing that. You should be doing like, is it hard for you not to go and correct them and just be like, listen, give me 2 minutes. I can help you.
I don't walk up to people and just do that. But if we're in a
No, I
conversation,
know you don't do that, but
right? But like if we start, like I was talking to a guy at the gym the other day, and he was saying, "Yeah, I have trouble with split squats." I go, "Oh, well, show me." And then he did it, and I'm like, "Oh, that's why." And he goes, "What?" I said, "So you have a knee valgus, which means your knee collapses inward, right?"
yeah,
So he's trying to use his leg, and he's trying to use his glute and his quad, but his knee's caving in, so he's disengaging the gluteus medius, and it's at a bad angle, right, where you can't maximize leverage, basically.
yeah,
So I said, here's how I'd fix that. Put a band on the outside of your knee, have you push the knee out, so your brain is feeling, oh, push, out. Now move up it. Oh, right. I said that's called biofeedback, right?
yeah,
You're feeling this pressure, you push against it, and it teaches your brain the right movement pattern. So he had a dysfunctional movement pattern. Now he has a functional movement pattern. And then as soon as he's like, oh, wow, now it's easy, right? So
yeah.
his brain learned the proper technique, and then it's like, now practice that over and over again. Then you can do it without thinking about it.
Yeah,
That's
that's good
the
though.
main
People
thing.
need that feedback and you
Yeah,
need that information. I think a lot of people, like you said, when they think of personal training or they think it's like, I don't want to be a bodybuilder. Like I don't need to get jacked. And that's
right. Or a
not the
power lifter.
goal. Yeah. Like the
Right.
goal
Now,
is,
they'll have their time and place. I'm not going to put that
oh yeah,
down.
yeah. No,
But
definitely. But
yeah,
I mean, the end goal, and maybe this is just my opinion, but it should be for overall health, longevity, enjoying life, being able to do those functional movements. Like you
right.
said,
Quality of life.
tying your
Right.
shoes at age 90. And there's always
Right.
that meme that I see where it's like, choose your shoes. And there's a 75-year-old person who puts on the shoes at the nursing home, like the slip-ons, or the other
Right.
one's tying up their running shoes so they can go out for a run. It's
Right.
like,
Exactly.
where do you want to be? But you got to put the effort in. You got to try, and there's nothing wrong with getting some help from people who know what they're talking about.
Right.
Um,
And I always say, if you don't train with me, that's fine. But at least you know this information, and now you know where to move forward from.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now it's obvious talking to you for 20 minutes that you definitely have a wealth of knowledge here and experience. You mentioned you are in the process of writing a book. Is it cool for me to
Yes.
ask you about that?
Yeah. So I'm about 98% done. So I
Wow.
need about another paragraph, and then I was working on because I want some pictures, not a lot, but some pictures to show what I'm talking about without violating copyright infringement and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So I'm learning how I'm going to do some AI stuff to come up with the pictures I want without it being a copy of someone else's. But basically, it's called Personal Training, Sales and Success. And this goes back to me learning the business aspect of things. Um, what I run into with trainers is they get great scientific training, either science or just practical. Like I'm certified through NASM, National Academy
Yeah.
of Sports Medicine. Oh, that's great. Okay, and then it's like, okay, you have this wealth of information, and there's people that want that, but you've never been in a sales position. So when I first got into the industry, it was like, okay, now we don't know how to train you on that, but you're responsible for that. And you have a sales quota and the department has a sales quota, and we get in trouble if the department doesn't hit their sales goal and you don't hit, you don't get to work here anymore. And
Yeah.
I think I never saw any good statistics on this, but I'd say the average personal trainer lasts about 6 months.
I feel like I've read something about that too. Yeah. Between
Right.
6 months and a year, it's not a long industry for most people.
And generally it's because they either didn't make enough money to satisfy what the business wants, or they didn't make enough money to pay their bills, and so they find some other job to do. So part of what I get into in the book is this idea, and I think Apple's a good analogy. So you have Steve Jobs and you have Steve Wozniak, right? A
Yeah.
trainer has to be both guys. So Steve Jobs is the idea man, the marketing guy, the visionary, the face, right?
Yeah.
But he has to have something to sell, right? So then you have Steve Wozniak, and a lot of people don't know who Steve Wozniak is. He's the genius engineer creating a lot of this stuff. He's the head of the teams that Steve Jobs. So he's the guy welding the circuits and coming up with better ways of doing things. So trainers, they learn that science part, the Steve Wozniak, and then they're thrown in. I always say it's like you're thrown into the deep end of the pool and said, "Now swim." No lessons on that, but you better learn to sink. If you don't swim, you're going to sink. It's like, well, I'm moving
Yeah.
my arms, but I have no sales training, right? So that's what I get into in the book is being able to be both those people and be able to learn. Basically, I always say the key to sales is demonstrating value, right? So I always say to people, trainers, when I'm training them, when you have a potential client in front of you, in their head, they have a scale going on. And on one side is the value, their perceived value of their money. And on the other side is the perceived value of what you're selling. And if you don't tilt the scale in your favor, they're saying, no, my money is worth more than what you're selling.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to change that and demonstrate value. So the old school, like in sales, they'd say, always be closing. Well, that sounds great. It should be always be demonstrating value, and it sells itself. So you said the best way to sell. Sometimes I've had sales where I didn't even talk to the person. So what I mean by that is I would be talking to a client in a gym, and like, we're going to do this, and here's why we're doing it, and then so we're going to do this. And then people would see me training them and how I'm interacting with them, and they would go to my boss or me afterwards and go, I want to buy training from you. And then other trainers would be like, how did you do that? I'm over here, I'm doing 5 consultations a day. I'm selling, I think the industry average is 2 out of 10 or 20%.
Yeah.
So you didn't even talk to this person and you made a sale. How did you do that? And I go, it's the art of selling without selling. I'm demonstrating so much value that they want to buy from. They want what I'm selling without me even talking to them. So that's basically what I get into in the book is different situations and things like how to market yourself, how to interact, how to get hired. That's another thing.
Yeah.
When I worked in management, I would get people like, "Hey, I'm a trainer. Hire me." Okay, can I see your resume? Resume. Right? It's like they didn't know how to write a resume. It's like, okay, email that to me. Okay, and then I get 3 paragraphs. Well, I lifted weights in high school for football. and I really like fitness, and right now I work at the grocery store.
Oh,
Okay, that's not a
so yeah,
resume.
yeah,
You need some basic resume writing skills, so look into that. That's easy to find. Look at a
yeah.
template online, and so things like that, like just common sense things that just a lot of people in fitness they don't learn that business part, like how to conduct yourself. Um, how
And that
to
doesn't mean they're not knowledgeable or good at what they do in the fitness world. It's like you said, that
right,
sales piece, that marketing yourself piece that isn't really taught and can be difficult. And honestly, it's a little scary for a new person too to try and
right.
market themselves into this industry, which if you look on social media or wherever, there are a ton of people out there doing the same thing. So it's
Right. Yep.
tough to break into.
It's a very saturated market. How are you going to stand out? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Um, oh, that's it. So, do we have like a projected date when you're hoping this will be out and on the shelves, or when it's going to be done and edited
So right now I'm looking at about 2 months from now.
to be done,
Yeah.
and then the publishing process and all that
Yep.
part starts?
Luckily, I have clients that used to work for book companies, so I've got good
Oh,
connections there.
that's great. That is great. Because that piece, I imagine, is not easy either.
Right.
Um, getting your foot in the door and everything like that. But that's exciting. That's not a short or a small process or a small
Right.
time frame to get something like that done. How long you been working on that?
Probably on and off now for 3 years.
Wow, that's
And
a
and part of it is I'm a perfectionist, so you write 4 pages and then you read through. I don't like how I did that. This is
yeah.
a better way to explain that. And that this is what about this situation? I forgot to add that in. And I'm trying to anticipate. Someone who's new to the industry. Like I have no experience, and I need to know this part of it before I start somewhere. And it's kind of from the ground up, like from the point of getting hired to okay, now I'm hitting my sales quota every month to now I'm promoted. Now I'm the fitness manager, or I've actually helped people get promoted. Either I was mentoring them or I worked under them, and I if my numbers are good, their numbers look good. That kind of
that's
thing.
true. That's definitely true.
Um, yeah. So and that's the thing. It's like I like to help people, and it's not always fitness stuff. It could be from like I remember years ago I was talking to a trainer, and she was having trouble with sales, and she was okay with the sales, but I said, you realize that when a client buys training with this gym, they don't have to pay all up front. They can do a 50-50 split. So let's say they buy $1,000 worth of training, they can do $500 this month and $500 the next. I didn't know I could do that. All of a sudden, their sales went up like 80%
Oh, that's
because
awesome.
because it allowed the client to say, I don't have that money now, but I definitely want to train with you.
Yeah.
So as long as we can find some middle ground where everyone benefits, then it's a win-win.
No,
So she's like, no one ever
that's
told me
great.
that. I said, well, I only knew because I asked questions, right?
Yeah. And sometimes you just don't know the questions to ask.
Right,
How would you have ever known, can I split this up over the couple months if you're not familiar with it, you haven't done it. Um,
right.
oh, so that's got to be exciting. Um, and I like the approach you're taking to it because it's not just it's helping out trainers getting started, which is I think there's a huge need for that piece of it, especially if people are only lasting 6 months.
Right.
It's a lack of understanding and knowledge on how to
I
navigate.
uh, I talk about that in the book. I said you get online and you hear, oh, you're gonna open up your own gym franchise. Great. How do you get from hey, I'm a new trainer. I have no sales experience to I own my own studio or something. It's like you got to learn sales. That's if
Yeah.
you don't learn sales, you never get anywhere near like you brought up. It's like if you cancel out at 6 months, like how did you ever get to this other level? Like that's 20 levels from where everyone's starting from.
And I think and this goes for everything in life. I think we've been conditioned to expect things to happen quickly, and they
Right,
don't if you're doing them the right way. I mean,
right,
there really are no shortcuts. There was something where I forget who said it, but the only shortcut is there are no shortcuts. Like
Right,
understanding the fact that, heck, if you want to be successful in this career, it's like any other career. Nobody gets promoted to CEO after 6 months or starts their own
right,
business after 6 months. Like you got to learn the ropes. You've got to understand that that's part of the process. So the same thing goes for and that's the same thing when you're training yourself or when you're training a client. The client needs to understand, like, everything's not getting fixed in 6 months. Like I need to think about, all right, when I look back 2 years from now, I'm going to be a completely different person. But I know going to the gym once or twice, I'm not going to see a difference. And I
right.
have to understand and accept that. Um,
Well, even
which,
from a training point of view, you can't get consistent results with an inconsistent program,
yeah,
right? So you get people like, well, yeah, here's what I want, here's where I am, here's where I want, but I can only work out once a week. I'm like, I mean, hey,
it's
we
not
got to
going
be
to happen.
realistic.
Yeah,
The way you're going about that is like saying, I'm going to brush my teeth once a week and wonder why my teeth aren't clean,
yeah,
right? You got to
exactly.
do it every day,
Exactly.
on some level.
Like,
So,
it's better to brush your teeth once a week than never. Like
right,
it's
right.
better than nothing, but you're not going to get where you want to be.
There's a
Um,
lot of people that do this. I have one day a week to work out. So in that one workout, I work out for 4 hours and I
yeah.
just, do everything, right? And I'm like, that's like brushing your teeth for an hour straight, but then again, not brushing the rest of the week. It's like you're just going to damage your gums and. So it's the
No.
same thing with the human body. You can't like overdo that and expect a consistent result or,
Yeah.
any kind of result. So yeah, the consistency both in fitness, but also in your career of, how many clients do you train? How many, this is the other thing with trainers a lot is when they're not comfortable with sales, they avoid it. So a lot of times, before I went independent, I worked for Export Fitness, and I worked for them for 8 years. And you go, oh, new trainer, what are they doing? They're behind the personal training desk. Why? Well, they don't have any clients. Well, that's not how they're going to get any clients.
Yeah.
They have to interact with people, right? You need to get away from the desk, interact with uh, people on the gym floor. Try to get as many sales leads as possible, which means you might have a call list. You might have, oh, here's some consultation forms. These people were wishy-washy on buying training, but they never did. Or here's a list of people that joined and they were here for 3 weeks and paid for a year and they haven't used it since. Let's motivate them to get back in and offer them a free training session, and that now you have a sales consultation. So it's kind of like forcing yourself to get in an uncomfortable situation to learn how to be comfortable in that situation.
I love that you said an uncomfortable situation because
Right,
people are so stuck in their comfort zone and you
right,
never grow, you never change, you never get better if that's where
right.
you're staying.
Both physically and career wise, right?
Everything, yeah. Yeah, which is great. And it honestly, like, to start off too, going up to people and talking to them initially is intimidating if you aren't used to that. So
Right,
even like a goal at the beginning, all right, I want to get 10 no's today, which means I have to talk to at least 10 people in order to get that.
right,
Eventually those will turn into a few yeses, but like learning to do that first step and just
right.
get off your backside behind the personal training desk and get out there.
So in,
Um,
in my in my experience, so I got hired at a place where they had no sales training. It was a small town in Pennsylvania, big gym though, 87,000 square feet.
wow.
Um, and they're expecting us to sell, and they weren't giving any training. And so, but I was getting consultations, and you're almost like you're expected to fail. So, uh, I guess from my point of view, and this I started a long time ago before there was YouTube and any. I mean, there were personal training certifications, mostly the correspondence course and that kind of stuff. Again, you're learning science, but you're not learning any sales stuff. But basically, what I did was I was put in this situation over and over again, and after a while, I started to notice when I said things a different way, I'm getting a better result. So I was kind of trial and error learning the sales part. When I
Yeah.
say this way, I get a better result. When I say it that way, I get a bad result. And then after a while, I started hitting my sales goal, and my boss is like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I figured this out." And then pretty soon I got better and better at it. And then, in sales, they talk about objection handling and that kind of thing, and different types of objections, and learning what to say and when to say it and how to say it. But the main thing with the book is, what if I could give someone a book so they don't have to go through that long process that I did? They already
Right.
have some tools. Okay, well, Mike said, when they say this, you say that. Or if you're doing such a good job with this, you don't have to do a hard sell. It's an easy sell. It's just you talking about what you love, and that
Yeah.
brings people in. So that's what my hope with the book is, to get into that, where uh, they can, again, shortcut in a sense, but you still have to go through that process of, okay, I have to talk to a stranger. Sometimes it's multiple strangers. You might have a consultation with a family of, there's four of them, and they all
Yeah.
have different goals and needs. Maybe one of them's got the money, but they all have different. How am I gonna, talk to what they need, and uh, what they say they want versus what they need, that kind of thing. So, the more you can get in that situation, the better, more comfortable you'll start to feel, and confident, and then from there you get more success.
Yeah, absolutely. My next question is kind of putting you on the spot. So if it's not one you like, we can just cut it and we won't have it. But in general, when people are coming in, they're new to training, and I know everybody's different, so it's kind of tough to give an umbrella answer. But what do you have, like, top three suggestions you would give to people who are new to training, whether it be nutrition, water, recovery, what sort of exercises to start with, or how to approach fitness? Are there
Right.
certain things you notice that happen with the majority of people?
The main thing I would say is, you got to get started. You got to take action, right? Then from there, you have to have a plan to be as consistent as possible. So, back to that concept. Um, then from there, make sure you talk to even if you don't buy training, at least talk to a trainer so they can kind of point you in a direction. Um, and then from there, just some simple things, because I've seen a lot of trouble with this. Make sure you drink enough water.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked at so many gyms, and I've had it happen to me, where someone comes in, and I'm not even, it's their first training session. So I'm barely having them move. It's more like, well, let me show you what we're doing and why. Okay, now you try it. That's pretty good. Okay, and this is good. Now we're gonna go to the, and then they go, oh, yeah, I don't feel good. Okay, well, what's going on, right? So then you start asking questions like, oh, I never drink water. I drink soda. Did you drink anything?
And
No.
I drink coffee. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
drink.
yeah, yeah, which
Yeah,
is a diuretic, right? So then
yeah,
you're losing water that way. So make sure you're hydrated before you exercise. Some people get low blood sugar, and they're not aware that, hey, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to burn some calories. Yeah, but if your blood sugar is low, your brain starts shutting off, especially if you have problems with diabetes and things like that, which is a lot of people, if they have diabetes, that's why they go to the gym. They're trying to work on the fitness and nutrition part of that. So make sure your blood sugar, if it's too high or too low, that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, learning the body, as much as you can, your specific body, how you move, what hurts, what doesn't hurt, and why. Again, that's where the trainer kind of points. If you don't work with them, at least let them kind of educate you on, okay, this is what I see is going on with you. So you need to be aware of that. Um, this is kind of a sales thing, but like a lot of times I would get over the years, all these machines in here have the instructions on them. So why do I need a trainer? Right? So I
yeah.
go, okay, so all the machines have instructions, but is that the right machine for you? What do you mean? Well, you see how your posture is like this, and you told
Yeah.
me you have a rotator cuff issue. Why are you over there on the pec fly machine making these
Making
muscles
it
tighter?
worse.
Right. So you might have perfect technique, but you're agitating a problem that you told me about. So again, this is where at least having some idea of, I talked to an expert and they're kind of pointing me in the right direction. Um, and that's the other thing is, people go on YouTube and it's like there's so much information on YouTube. It's overwhelming. And even me, I love YouTube, and I go on there and I'm like, oh, I'll show a client like, look at this exercise, and they go, oh, that seems too simple. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I have 80-year-old clients. That simple thing for them is a world changer because maybe they can't walk right. They have arthritis in their knees, but they need to strengthen their glutes. So something simple like a bridge helps them. Or here's an exercise. Okay, if you're an MMA fighter and you're already well conditioned, that exercise makes sense because they're already at a level where they're here and that exercise is here. They're not, at level 1 and that exercise is level 60.
Yeah. And I saw a video of some guy doing handstand push-ups. And I'm like, dude, I want to do that. Like, that looks awesome. But there's
Right.
no way I can just jump into a handstand and start doing push-ups,
Right.
and even like bracing against the wall. I was watching videos on the proper progression, but like
Yep.
step
Yep.
one is to roll into, I don't even know what it's called, where it's like a frog with your hands on the ground and your
Yep.
knees are on your elbows and starting there to get that
Yep.
balance. And then it's a slow progression. And I'm like, all right, this is probably going to take me a while to get there, but
Right.
you just got to understand that you've got to level up as if you want to try and
Right.
gamify it or do something like
So in
that.
that analogy, so what I would ask you is, or what I would assess on you is, okay, I see where you want to go. You told me your
Yeah.
goal, but where is your fitness level in relation to that? So a good trainer would know how to assess where they are, how to progress from there, or how to regress. So this goes back to movement competency. If you're at like level 1, okay, I could maybe go to level 2 based on how I observe your empirical evidence about how you move. If you don't show me that level of movement competence, I might have to go, we're going to stay at 1 until you get this.
Yeah.
So like an analogy might be, okay, you're having trouble with addition and subtraction, but you're trying to do multiplication and division, right? So we need to teach this basic thing, master that, and then go, But yeah, people don't realize there's all these steps in between, So
Oh,
like with what you're describing,
I was getting
yeah,
laughed at the gym when I'm trying to do these things. And of
yeah,
course, one of the girls who used to be a gymnast was like, "Oh, I can do a hand. So watch this." And I'm like, "Come on,
yeah,
I'm doing my best here." They were just
right.
teasing me. Well, obviously,
But
like,
her level of shoulder mobility and shoulder stability might be
oh,
times 8 what yours is,
so
and maybe
much
she
better.
weighs less, so she doesn't have to stabilize all that weight like you do, So there's all
Yeah.
these variables.
No, and I get in like growing up as I, first got into the gym, I didn't know what I was doing. So it was like, all right, I got to do bench press. I got to make sure I get that one in. And
Right,
then, all right, I should probably do pull ups. Like you just piecemeal put stuff together, but you don't understand the bigger picture,
right,
how they all fit into where. And you see a lot of people with the same routines or the same movements. So they get really good at those movements. But if you
right,
try to do like a single arm, you know, dumbbell raise, lat raise, something like that, if they haven't used that, they're like, it's
right,
so uncomfortable and gives them shoulder pain. And it's like,
right,
all right, we've got to work on a lot of, unilateral movements as opposed to doing the bilateral, in
right.
which
So on,
a
on
lot of
that
people.
note,
Oh, good.
I
Jump
brought
in.
some toys I want to show you.
Oh, nice. So
So,
you got to watch on YouTube. I'll do my best to describe them if you're listening.
okay, so this is a wobble board,
It's
right?
a circular disc with a ball on the bottom, we'll say.
Right. So it's unstable, right? So there's the wobble board, then there's this, right? So you see how these move independently, and
Yeah,
there's
they
a
look
finger
like a
balance on the
couple
front.
of bike pedals attached together. They move independently. That's the best
Right.
description I can give.
So let's say you get a client who they're just learning how to squat, right?
Yep.
And their squat technique is good. So we go, okay, they've learned, like you said, bilateral things, and it's like, all right. So we start. They demonstrate that competency with that, and then you start adding weight. And this is what I ran into with older clients, and sometimes younger ones too. Um, there's a certain point where adding weight isn't more beneficial, especially if you talk about connective tissue, inflammation and that kind of stuff. So
Can
the
you
thing becomes, what's
can you
that?
expand on that just a little bit? Because I know a lot of
Yeah,
people are like, all right, I need to PR, I need to PR, I need to add more weight.
right. So there's different ways to challenge the body and the mind, right? So weight is one component of that. But the other one is instability, right? Or coordination. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier about a coordinated effort, like a football team.
Yeah.
So you might be able to squat 300 pounds, right? In a very controlled environment. And then I go, okay, let's have you do the wobble board with just your body weight and you're all over the place, right? Which means you can produce force, but you can't control it.
Yeah.
So power is nothing without control. So imagine a fire hose, all this, water coming out. This is a reference to Tim, firefighter. Um, so the water's coming out, all this force, PSI, right? But if no one's controlling where it's going, it's not putting the fire out. It's counterproductive. It's a waste of energy, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So if I can get someone to go, okay, well, you got some knee arthritis, right? Where you've overloaded your connective tissue, more weight, more weight, more weight, and now it hurts to move. And then you're like, well, I can't move. So how can I exercise? Moving equals pain, and I don't want to feel pain. So another way to do that is go, okay, well, let's add instability. Let's add another variable. How well can your mind and your body work together to control that movement? So I'm going to have you squat like on the wobble board, and then you have to worry about left to right, front to back, rotation, all these other planes of motion.
Yeah.
Can you control that? Right? Now with this one, right, the single one, so you might have someone do a split squat, right? Now you're like you brought up, you're talking about unilateral or one limb, right? So you might be good with two limbs, but on one leg you're terrible, and that's a sign that we need to work on some things. And you think about when you walk, you're on one foot for a split second, right? When you run, you're really on one foot. If you're moving laterally or up and down, front to back. Now, if Tim were here, I'd ask him, what's the number one injury in basketball? And he'd probably say an ankle sprain.
Yeah.
And you think about, here's a guy, basketball player. He's 6'9", right? Let's say he weighs 240, right? And he's got all that mass above his ankle up like this, and his little muscles in the ankle are stabilizing that. It's like a house of cards, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we can strengthen those little muscles in the foot, the ankle, the knee, and the hip and the core, you can control the movement better. So navigating through space, not just like on a machine or when you squat, you're not moving front to back, you're just going up and down. But when we're moving through a three-dimensional or technically a four-dimensional space, how well can you control that? Can you control the motion? And the other question would be, can you control unwanted motion? So when you're doing like a plank, you're trying to resist, the hips moving, especially do hips like a plank and you go on one arm for a second.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Your core is having to stabilize an uneven hip or uneven core. So resisting rotation. That's actually one of the tests from the functional movement screen by Gray Cook is, do like a bird dog, and what does your core rotate when you're not trying to rotate it? Can you control that movement? And that's the thing when you, especially with older clients, the risk of falling is a very important thing to avoid. Can we prevent falls? If they do fall, how bad is it? And if they fall, how can we get them back training again? Because they might, I can't work out because I'm in so much pain. It's been 2 weeks, right? And then their muscles atrophy, their connection from the brain gets less coordinated or unskilled. So it's good to have those movement patterns at a young age and at an old age.
I feel like those injuries are probably, I don't have any statistics on this, but one of the biggest reasons people stop working out is they get injured and can't, and then they get out of the routine or out of the habit of it. And then, So any of these exercises that can build those supporting muscles or joints and everything like that are super beneficial.
So it's the quality of the movement, not just the power or force of the movement, right? So, like say, again, you can squat a lot, but you have trouble walking on a cobblestone street. That bothers my hip and my knee, or I kept falling,
Yeah.
Because it's not, the real life isn't this controlled environment where everything is completely flat. And that's one thing I should bring up. Originally, I'm from Northern California.
Yeah.
From the West Coast. So where I'm from is 4 hours north of San Francisco. And it doesn't get hot or cold. It's always like 55. So it rains a lot in the winter. It's like Seattle weather. but we didn't
Yeah.
get snow really. So then I go to college on the East Coast. Oh, great, snow. This is so much fun until it's 7:30 in the morning. You're walking to class and you learn real quick you have to change how you walk because if you
Yes.
don't, you slip on the ice and you break your tailbone. And I did that I didn't break my tailbone, but I fell about 5 times my freshman year walking to class. And then you look around like, did anyone see that?
Yeah.
Now,
As a
luckily,
freshman, you don't want to be that guy.
yeah. And luckily, I have good bone mineral density and strong, so, it's like a little bruise and you're fine. But if I were older, that could be life threatening,
Yeah. And
broken
that's
bones.
really, I like the point you made there, how you have to adjust what you're doing based on your environment. And
Right.
if your body isn't able to adapt to those environments, that's going to cause a real issue for a lot of people. So getting these in the analogy or the description of the huge basketball player on a little ankle, like there's a whole lot of force hitting the ground as they're running and then trying to, like, if you're not training the ankle to move in those different directions and building up what you
Right.
need
Or
to
stabilize.
support it, that's going to lead to some injuries. And I think that's why we see a lot of soft tissue injuries in, athletics as injured players are coming back from like a knee surgery, or if they hold out over the summer because they want a new contract in football. Usually the first thing you see is a pulled hamstring when they get going
Right.
again because they're not used to that and they kind of go from 0 to 60 instead of progressing as they should. So, um, no, that's I like that. I like that a lot. We're about 50 minutes in. I don't want to steal your whole night here. Are there other things you wanted to make sure we hit on that we didn't? We didn't talk about Bruce Lee much at all. I know you're a big
Well,
fan.
the main thing with Bruce, it's just that, adapting to the client and the client adapting to you and drawing from multiple disciplines of fitness and movement. And that's the thing, too. I'm so good at reading movement patterns and all that. I've actually had clients and like, oh, you have a dance background. How'd you know that? Well, when I had you do this move, you did this little flick with your arm, or you have a martial arts background because you did it kind of like, hey, hey, the way
Yeah.
they did their dumbbells. Or I met a martial arts instructor. He instructs one of my clients, and we met, and he moved his hands a certain way. I said, oh, you have Wing Chun hands. He goes, how'd you know that? And I said, well, I'm a big Bruce Lee fan, and Wing Chun was Bruce Lee's base martial art, Wing Chun Kung Fu. And the way you moved your hands was like, I could tell you had that kind of movement strategy, that kind of, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? That pattern of, okay, this is how we move. And so, you can pick up on things like that. But yeah, he just had that good mind body, connection. Like if you've ever watched Enter the Dragon, he's having a conversation with the monk, and he says, "Well, when my opponent expands, I contract, and when he contracts, I expand. And when there's an opportunity, I don't hit; it hits all by itself." What he means by that is he adapting to the opponent, and when there's an opportunity, he's rehearsed that movement so many times. He has what's called unconscious consciousness. He doesn't have to think, "Oh, what do I do?" It just happens spontaneously, right? The
Right.
correct movement at the right
Yep.
time, right?
And that's
And
what
that's
you
a
see
lot of
with
practice.
in athletics with like a Kyrie Irving dribbling the ball, and the moves he can do with the ball. Like it's not like, oh, that guy's foot's there, I need to now do, like there's no time to think like that. It's
Right.
reaction,
You think you're dead.
or
Yeah.
running back planting and cutting through a hole. You've trained so much that your body has adapted and it
Right.
understands what it needs to do.
So in a
um,
sense, you're going by feel, in a lot of these things. So like when I went to college, we talked a lot about kinesthetic intelligence or kinesthetic awareness or proprioception. So your brain has an internal map of where your limbs are, and as we age, that gets a little bit less sensitive, right? So I remember at Penn State, they did a research study while I was there. They had older people stand on a force plate, and they noticed as they got older, their hips would sway, and they weren't aware of it.
that's
So they've
that's
lost that awareness, right?
Is some
So
of that because of age and some deterioration, or do you think some of it, or maybe it's a combination of as you get older, you stop doing those things that require the movements as much. Like when you're a
I think
kid, you
it's
go out and you play. So
I
your
think it's
body's used to these different movements.
right. I think it's a combination of everything. If your eyesight starts to go, that's going to throw off your horizon line. Your hearing
Okay.
has a lot to do with, again, knowing horizon. Just knowing, feeling your body, right? Especially if someone has neuropathy, like type 2 diabetes, they can't feel their feet. So how do they know
Um,
where their feet are, right?
you
Um,
try to stand on one foot with your eyes closed. That
right. Oh,
people
so that's a
immediately
great
start to
point,
fall.
actually. So when I did physical therapy, they had basically it was a giant wobble board with a rail around it, and
Yep.
you'd have the client or a patient step on there, and they go, okay, now stand on that, and we're going to turn it up level 1. It's a little bit okay. Level 2, level 3. Okay, now Mrs. Johnson is really good at level 10. Now we're going to go back to level 1. Now do it with your eyes closed,
Ugh.
right?
Yeah.
So now you have to do it by body feel, not visual cues, right? So even when you get a DUI test and the police says, now close your eyes and touch your nose, right? So if you're going, right, your brain doesn't know where things are. So why are you driving a car, right? So
Yes.
that's what they're testing for. So you have receptors in your joints that communicate with the brain to tell you where things are in relation, right? So, if I close my eyes, how do I know where my hands are? How can I touch them? That kind of thing. I can go by
Yeah.
feel. So that kind of gets, uh, you know, like you're saying, it's you lose that skill because you don't practice it, but then your senses get a little dulled as you get older. So that type of training is very important to prevent injuries, and again, it's a way to challenge someone's fitness level without just make it heavier, heavier, heavier. You
Yeah,
know,
and I like how you not to hop on the DUI testing, but I was
yeah,
looking up stuff on sleep and the importance of sleep. And
yep,
when you're up for, I think it was 17 hours straight, your reaction time and cognition is equivalent to having a blood alcohol level of like 0.05. And once you hit that 24 hours straight, it's 0.01, which is, or no, zero point 0.1. So it's above the legal limit
right,
at that point in time. I might be messing, I might not have enough zeros in there, but
right.
whatever it was,
No, you get the point.
24
Yeah,
hours up, you're over the legal limit at that point in time. So, like you said, is it safe to drive a car if you don't have that reaction? And I don't think people prioritize sleep as you get older as
yeah,
much as you should. Like you could not go like go to the gym 3 or 4 or 5 days a week, do the same exact thing and sleep 5 hours a night, and then continue to do the same thing, but now sleep 7 to 8, and you're going to see an incredible improvement.
right.
So it's
Now,
it's
interesting on that note, because clients will ask me questions all the time. They'll say, of all the clients you have, you talk about what their profession is. What are the ones that have the most problems? I go, well, number one is truck driver,
yep,
right?
I can see that.
So lack of sleep, little or no activity because they're sitting, usually
Yes,
hooked on stimulants to stay awake, and then they don't move, so everything's tight, right? You just sit.
yes,
Number two, and this is what people don't realize a lot of times, is nurses.
because they
So
don't.
this is what I would get all the time. So the girl's 25, and she says, I don't know what's going on. I put on like 30 pounds in the last 2 years, and I'm working out like I've always worked out. I've always been thin and healthy, and I don't know what's going on. And they tell me they're a nurse, and I go, okay, what are your sleeping patterns like? Well, I get 2 hours, then 12 hours, then 3, then 9, then
Yeah,
1, then 13. I'm like, okay, so just based on that, your hormone levels are going wacky. Your cortisol levels
yeah,
up, which is a fat storage hormone. Your insulin sensitivity is going down. Testosterone's probably going down. So all the ones that store fat are going up, and all the ones that help metabolize things are going down. Then I go, okay, what's your diet like? Well, they bring cupcakes and cookies into the break room. I'm like, well, no one's putting a gun to your head. You can bring your own food, right?
yeah. It's like the
So it's a lot of
teacher's
sugar, simple
teacher's room
carbs.
diet right there.
Yeah, yeah. And then a lot of times again, oh yeah, I'm smoking cigarettes, I'm drinking coffee, got to be up, 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 up. So a lot of stimulants. So it's just, they don't think all they think about is, well, I'm working out the same, but their lifestyle is killing them.
Yes,
Their
absolutely.
sleep and their diet.
So
And that's usually like 80% of the problem.
yeah, it's not the working out that's usually the issue for most people. They can, a lot of times you can convince people to get to the gym 3 or 4 times a week and make sure you're walking 10,000 steps or whatever it happens to be. But it's the other, 23 hours in the day that are causing people the problems.
Right.
So, well, Mike, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to hop on with me. Personal training, sales and secrets, hopefully is coming out in a couple months. I want to give a big shout out when that actually does hit the shelf. So please keep me
Thank
aware
you.
of how that's going. Would love to kind of talk about that too once that gets going. Love to hear how that experience is um, as well. How can people get in touch with you if they'd like to? Is there a good way to do that?
Right now, probably Instagram.
Instagram. Okay.
So
And what is
my
your
name on
handle
there,
there?
yeah. So it's Money Mike Fitness Guru.
All right. Let me write that down. Sorry, I'm
There's
just
a,
taking notes as we're talking.
yeah,
Money, Mike, Fitness Guru, no
and that's
spaces or anything.
all one word. And there's a story behind that name. Um, the other trainers I worked for when I worked for Export, that's a nickname they gave to me, Money Mike,
Oh,
because
nice.
I would lead the department in sales every month or every other month, something like that. So they started calling me that.
Oh, that's a good one. I've been called much worse than that. So Money Mike,
Yeah,
Money
yeah.
Mike is a good one. All right. Well, thank you, Mike, and thank
Thank
everybody
you.
for listening. We appreciate you taking the time. Again, if you can share this with people, if you've enjoyed this, that would mean the world to us. We want to get the word out for Mike and his book and just his knowledge and everything that he brings to the table for people and his clients. Because just after 2 minutes of talking to you, I was like, all right, this guy knows his stuff. This is good.
Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your night or morning or whatever it is you happen to listen. So thank you very much.